I have learned that my mind can be both a solution and a problem. And so the morning practice is really about making the mind a solution and having the mind. The fancy language I would use is have my mind serve my heart. What is my heartfelt desire? I need my mind, right? I want it to pay attention to my heartfelt desire. I want it to take me toward my heartfelt desire, toward the realization of my heartfelt desire.
So I want to say thank you for holding this space for all of us. This is always the case with this community, exactly what I wanted to hear and incredibly inspirational. So thank you to everybody who shared, and thank you, Tommy, for everything you do. My inquiry today is something that I have struggled with my whole life, and that is time and my very complicated, messy relationship with time. Since getting on the path to recovery, I have felt much more of a pressure around time. And you said something earlier about being responsible for this life that we live and how, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. That's a big weight to carry. And so, where I find myself experiencing the most challenge is in this one taking on too much, and it's not even necessarily like an obligation to prove my worth, which it is in some instances, but also to have all of the experiences that are in life, and constantly wondering, like, am I doing enough? Am I happy enough? Are my relationships good enough? Is this job fulfilling enough? Am I making a big enough impact? And what happens is this inability to really experience the fullness of the situation that I'm in. And so while I'm mindful that I don't want to get in a position of settling in a situation and just deciding that, this is it and this is all it will ever be, there's also, I find myself struggling with that line of allowing myself to be grateful and fully present in the experience that I'm in, but also staying open to growth and new opportunities, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yes.
The way that I'm getting it across.
Oh, yes. Amazing. Incredible inquiry, Emily. Thank you so, so much. And this is in part an inquiry about time. And in part, it's an inquiry about ambition and experience and desire. There's so much here. Creativity, spontaneity, all of this. I want to share a story about a young man that I worked with some time ago in the context of recovery. So I'll give you a little background. This is a person who was about 38 years old, came to me, asked me for help, had been struggling with heroin addiction and opiate addiction since he was 21. So 17 years of addiction, on and off, but pretty steady through the 17 years. So we started to work together and we started to do, the practices and meetings and steps and yoga and the whole thing. And he started to make progress very quickly. At about 11 months, he came to me and he said the following: I feel like I'm behind in life. It nags me every day. I think about it every day, he reported to me. This feeling of constantly being behind. He said, at the same time, I can't wait for tomorrow to arrive. I can't wait for something new, something different. And for me, that was an earth-shattering statement for me, because it really summed up the problem people in recovery have often with time. So here was a guy who had, he was aware of the fact that he had been in active addiction for 17 years and very severe addiction. He was aware of the fact that now in recovery, he had this feeling of loss of that time, loss of what that could have been, all the stories that we can draw from a story like that, from a history like that. At the same time, he was saying, I'm so unhappy about what's been lost that I can't enjoy this day. And so I can't wait for the future to arrive here. I can't wait for something else to show up, because what I'm experiencing, which is connected with this unbelievable grief of what I've lost in my life to addiction, is so unpleasant that I don't seem to be able to get a break. If you are deeply concerned and attached to the past, what took place or what didn't take place, and you are sitting there waiting for some future which represents relief. I need something in the future to come that's relieving me of this. The thing that you're missing is the present moment. This present moment is being colored. I use that word purposely. The present moment is being colored by an experience in the past and a projection into the future. That if you even had a moment of sort of, I'm in this day now, let me try to even enjoy it, it would be difficult, because the mind is so skewed into past and future that it can't settle into an experience of what is actually here. Because the mind is so caught on the idea that what is actually here is the pain of looking at my past and the anxiety about whether the future will come quick enough to show me something that's relieving of this pain. So that's a monumental existential problem that many, many people who step onto a path of recovery from addiction can identify with this. One of the beautiful teachings of yoga that I heard a man, one of my favorite teachers, most beautiful people that I know. His name is Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswati ji. And he always says, whenever you awaken, and he's speaking spiritually, whenever you awaken, it's the morning. It's the morning. And what he's expressing in one sentence, one powerful sentence, is amongst the most profound teachings of yoga. It took everything for your life to unfold in the way that it did to this moment, for you to have this moment right now. You are neither late nor early to the party. It literally couldn't have been any other way. Now, the mind cannot grasp this concept. The mind, the ego wants to argue with this. No. I could have gone left instead of going right. I could have done this. I could have not done that. I did this. I made this mistake. I made that mistake. Well, let's just say for this person, it's true that this person continued to make choices that kept them mired in the pain and difficulty of addiction. But the beautiful news is that here in this moment, he was awake. Awake to the amazing grief of the time that was spent. And I'm not suggesting that he or anyone blow off that grief. That grief is to be felt. But that grief is not to be fashioned into a story that becomes your story of how you lost your life to addiction. for this person's life is a story of triumph. Imagine the triumph over addiction after so long. Oh my God. That person could have died in an alleyway, but no. Today, that person is helping other people get sober and has tremendous meaning in his life. So this is not a sad story. This is not a story of loss. This is not a story of a life that should have been another way. It's just another human experience. And this person went down the road of addiction to the extent that he did. And thank God, his karma blossomed to where he could experience something called recovery and heal from it. So, very important to understand that as people who come to the path of recovery, very often we feel like we've lost something, missed something, we're behind. So I'll just repeat the famous words: whenever you wake up, it's morning. Okay. So now that requires a tremendous level of acceptance, which I believe is on the other end of the grief. Beyond the grief, acknowledging the loss, the challenge, the difficulty, the pain, the trauma, working through all of that brings you to that place of acceptance. Okay. If I had to do it over again, I would do it differently. To reframe that statement, I have it to do over again. Today, I will do it differently. How blessed, I'm so empowered, so blessed to do it differently today. I wasn't able to break out of addiction before. So the movement into the present moment is really at the center, I feel, of your inquiry, especially when we talk about time management and spreading oneself too thin. You even referenced a psychological reason why some people are so driven, which is to seek approval or to feel better about oneself or have an elevated sense of self-worth. When that connection with one's authentic self is not established, it's very easy for us to default into these behaviors which are driven by the misunderstanding that somehow everything will be fine if everybody approves of me and of this behavior. This is not necessarily what you're experiencing, but it's what comes up for me in the exploration of this inquiry. The movement to the present requires a resolution of the attachment to the past. It doesn't mean we blow off what happened, but we resolve it. It has to be resolved so that we have the ability to be present. Part of the reason that we both meditate and are challenged by meditation is because as we sit still and begin to watch our mind, watch our thoughts, notice the emotions and the difficulties that come up in the mind or the body, when we begin that process, it's beginning to help us to unravel our attachments to what took place. But it's difficult. It's painful because we're starting to see how we have reacted to the world in ways that haven't necessarily brought about the results that we were looking for. But through that meditative practice, we begin to be able to come to hear. And for a little while, here might be, wow, I feel sad. I notice a feeling of sadness. Interesting. Where is that coming from? I notice I'm thinking about, name a topic, anything from your past. Conversation I had with somebody which was painful and didn't end well. And I'm sad about it. And that person's not here anymore. I can't fix it. I have the impression I can't fix it. Sitting there in meditation, having this understanding and watching my sadness rise and then sitting long enough to watch it go. And developing a different relationship with my past. Coming out of meditation in the world of recovery or any spiritual path, has things that we can do to begin to address the challenges of our lives. For example, if somebody's troubled by anger and resentment, it makes it very difficult to have a joyful day. They can be very reactive to life. And we learn on the path of recovery that we must deal with our resentment. We must resolve it so that we can be free and be here and be now. So the resolution of our angers and our resentments helps us to have more time in our day. So much time spent in unconsciousness, thinking about this, reacting to that. This mental swirl that we get into where it's like, I'm losing just time. I don't seem to have enough time in the day. Someone in the state of resentment or anger or caught in the past can report, I'm exhausted by the end of the day, but I didn't really do that much. So we do the work of resolving our angers and our resentments, of releasing our attachments to the things that once took place, which now exist as memory. And we sit and we bring ourselves to the present moment so that our projection into the future can be driven by intention, by the heart, less by fear, less by reactivity. So we're actually architecting and becoming better architects for the future that we desire to have. There's no way to explore this inquiry without a mention of meditation and the meditative practice, because this is the practice that we use to bring us to the present, to see our patterns of thinking, our patterns of belief, and to ultimately develop a relationship with our conscious mind that watches our thoughts. The consciousness that watches our thoughts, that's aware of our thinking. Oh, I'm having sadness. I had a sad thought. The conscious mind picks that up, and we're developing and building this relationship with something that is our consciousness, but it's also connected to the consciousness underneath everything. So from this perspective in recovery, when we talk about connecting with a power greater than ourselves, we might use the fancy language of connecting with the consciousness that is greater than just ourself. That consciousness is running through us, but it's also existing beyond us. And we can develop a deeper relationship with it simply by sitting still, cultivating silence, and beginning to pay attention. At first, we pay attention to the breath, our thinking. There can be other anchors for our attention and our awareness. And we begin to develop that deeper relationship. And there's an interesting thing that takes place. Our relationship with time changes. Time itself. Your relationship with a day, the 24 hours in a day, will shift. You will find yourself having more time. You will find yourself being less exhausted as you begin to calm the mind. And so these very basic, very accessible practices of meditation, of following the breath and following our thoughts and beginning to develop a relationship with our higher mind or our consciousness, central to this challenge. The next piece that I want to talk with you about is structure. Structure is thought of typically by people in recovery as a dirty word. We don't love that word so much. Most people that I know of who have ever dealt with addiction, we like to float a little more. We're not so into structure. I'm going to roll through the day. You know what I mean? And yet, structure serves us. It just has to be the right structure. So I'll give you an example. I'm more effective in my day, and I seem to have more time when I build a few elements of structure into the day. And we're speaking very practically now. So an example would be, I'll wake up and I'll do a morning practice that lasts about 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That's an element of structure. I do it because it calms my mind in such a way that it brings my mind to the present. It brings my mind into this day. I can release some of the hooks that might be still pulling at me from the past. And I can come right here into this day, and I can, with great intention and presence, move forward into sculpting the day ahead rather than just rolling through it and floating and being at the mercy of my mind. I have learned that my mind can be both a solution and a problem. And so the morning practice is really about making the mind a solution and having the mind, the fancy language I would use is have my mind serve my heart. What is my heartfelt desire? Well, I need my mind, right? I want it to pay attention to my heartfelt desire. I want it to take me toward my heartfelt desire, toward the realization of my heartfelt desire. So I add an element of structure into my day, which is my morning practice, so that it can serve me in that way. Another element of structure are my meals. I'm going to eat 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what I'm doing in my life at the time, if I'm on a particular regimen or whatever's going on. I, generally speaking, know when those meals are going to take place. They're another element of structure. I'd like to, especially for people in early recovery, I'd like to hit a meeting. I'm going to hit a meeting today. That's an element of structure. So I bring certain elements of structure into my day. But there is a science to this, and there is an art to this. And if I bring too many elements of structure into my day, I am then not able to do the things that are necessary for me to do in between the elements of structure. And the word that I'm going to use for you is creativity. You need to create. You're going to have to create in your life. You're going to create in the ways that you're going to create in your unique ways, but you're going to create your day and you're going to create your life. You're going to want to read things and write things and do things and create things and be a part of life in the way that you can be, which requires openness and spontaneity. So you begin to create a new kind of element of structure, which is called open time. I never liked the phrase downtime. I don't want downtime. I want open time. Who knows where it's leading? So you actually, and I'm suggesting this, you actually get practical about your day. Take a look at your day tomorrow, for example, or today, and say, okay, what's the day look like tomorrow? What do I have planned? How have I planned myself? Where's my open time? That open time is for you. And I have found in this world, in the busyness of life, open time is critical. You have to actually plan for it. It won't just happen in your schedule. Like, I'm married and I love spending time with my wife. But if we don't schedule certain things together, they don't just automatically happen. So if I want to take her out to dinner and I'm just waiting for a night when we just happen to have energy and be free and both want to do that, that may or may not come. But if we plan it into the calendar, boom, it's going to happen. So planning our open time is critically important to somebody who's looking to find greater presence, who's looking to relate to time better. The right amount of structure and the right amount of openings leads very practically to a much, much better experience of a day. Lastly, what occurs to me is that people in recovery are really learning how to become engineers of a 24-hour period of time. That we're becoming excellent at sculpting what takes place in a 24-hour period of time, and we're tweaking that through our life. So all I'm hearing from you in this inquiry is, okay, my tendency is I spread myself a little too thin. By the way, that's me to a T. That's what I have to watch as well. I have to create the right elements of structure and the right open time. And then when I make mistakes and I have like a 3-day run where I'm just like, Jesus, that was too much. That was too much for even me. I need to learn from that. And I need to shift And I might need to say to some people, I'm not able to meet you as I said I would. Can we plan for another time? You know, and here's the final thing that you had said. And boy, oh boy, do I get this. You expressed the great desire to take advantage of everything that life has to offer. And I really, really get it. I want that too. I want this life to be as full as it can be. And by shooting to do everything, it has the opposite effect. I know you're quite a bit younger than me, but when I was your age, and I'm guessing your age, but I'm pretty sure I'm in the right decade. When I was your age, I did have a feeling that I would somehow, even though I couldn't explain it exactly, that I would somehow get everything done. Everything I could conceive of, everything I wanted to do. I still had a sense, honestly. And when I think it was basically when I turned 45, that I had a big awakening. And I was doing some math in my head about all the things that I wanted to accomplish and do, all the places I wanted to go, the experiences I wanted to have. And all of a sudden, the math in my head was not lining up. Not only was it not playing out mathematically, but energetically, I was exhausting myself imagining doing everything that I had thought I wanted to do. I was at 45 years old, even though I have tremendous energy. Now I'm 55, and we can have another conversation about that. But at 45, I still had and still have now tremendous energy to do quite a few things. And yet I was like, wow, it is possible that I will not be able to do everything. And there's a grief there for a minute, and there's an acceptance there. And there's the movement into a deeper understanding of priorities. And what a beautiful thing that I have to really figure out, how would I choose to spend my time? Who would I choose to spend my time with? What environment would I put myself in? Do I need to take that trip, or would this trip be the right trip for me to take because my time in this body is limited? So these are some of the things that I think are important to think about when we think about time. Time is obviously, we misunderstand it. There's a lot of confusion around it. To us, it seems to operate past, present, future. That's not exactly from people who have had many experiences. It doesn't always exactly work that way, but that is how we perceive the movement of things. So that would be, to get into that discussion, we'd get into a very esoteric and confusing conversation, which I'll avoid today. But the point is here that we must find ourselves fully present. And the more present we are in this day, the more we will enjoy and benefit from and feel a fullness of experience here and now. Structure helps, open time helps, and forgive yourself when you spread yourself too thin. You were just trying to do everything and to get the most out of this life. And you'll learn as you go, as I am still learning about better management of time and picking and choosing the experiences. So let me understand what's coming up for you as you hear this exploration of this particular inquiry on time.
I mean, that you touched all of it. Even when I was thinking about how to bring the inquiry to you. There's so many different facets of this very complicated relationship. And I really appreciate all that feedback. But even in the structure and the intentionality, it's like making that the priority more than, well, I was thinking back to grad school. When I was in grad school, I would spend more time thinking about the things I had to do and worrying about them and how hard they were going to be than actually doing them.
Yeah.
And so just remembering that and being intentional. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, Emily. Thank you so much for the inquiry. I'm so grateful. And if you do happen to figure out how to do everything, I'm your first phone call. Are we cool?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.